Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Press and Pins. We are on episode 13. ASMR for you guys. But just make sure when you guys listen afterwards to drop a review, 5 stars only. Like if it's below five, don't even worry about it. Just keep your thoughts to yourself. JK, still drop them. And don't forget to tell a friend, to tell a friend, tell a friend. That's the only way podcasts really grow. If we don't know anything about podcast scaling and podcast growth, it's usually just because it's like word of mouth. Advertising doesn't really work. Nothing else does. So if you are investing in Preston Pins, go ahead and tell a friend, tell that friend to listen, and then that friend will listen and just recommend us. And as always, you guys may know it is me, your host, Coco Austin. I tried to think of who I would be within that first little millisecond, and I don't know, you guys. I don't got it in me today because I think I was Nora Smith the other day, and maybe I'm Lil Yachty. Oh, maybe I'm Lil Yachty causing a little bit of an offense today, shaking the room, telling everybody that New Yorkers can't dress, even though he's dead wrong. Dead, dead wrong. So maybe I'm not Lil Yachty. Maybe, oh, I'm Kamala. I'm Mamala. That's who I am. Okay. I'm Kamala in my pantsuit, getting business done. That's actually who I am this week. So let's rewind that. I'll start again. Hello, welcome to Press and Pin. My name is Mamala Harris, and I'm getting it done today. Okay, I got my two-piece pantsuit on in a solid pastel color, and I'm working it. I'm working it. I'm giggling. I'm laughing. I'm having a kiki, but I'm also getting my work done. But you guys, we missed last week's episode. I think I may have been at, oh yeah, I was at Nashville during the Black Market. Thank you guys to everybody that came out. I appreciate it. I love our new Nashville Sewmates. Heart to you guys. Thank you guys so much. It was a great time. It's always great getting out and seeing people and really letting people know that fibers even exist, because a lot of people just don't know we exist, and the great services that we offer and all the great fabrics you can buy with us, because we are a zero waste company. So it's amazing. I love getting out and doing that thing. And then so that's pretty much what I've been doing this week. I am currently designing one of my last shows of the summer. So this week is actually tech week for us. So besides that, designing that, I'm kind of trying to just chill and just focus on scaling. It's a lot. It's a lot going on mentally in my mind. I don't think outside of my mind there's a lot going on, but mentally there's some things that I'm like, I would love to work through it. As you can see, if you're watching this via YouTube, which you should be, if you're not, I don't have my sewing machine behind me because it's in my car right now. And I was like, I'm not even taking it out, and excuse me, I may have a little bit of a cold. But let's go ahead and get into this week's episode. For our textile tea, we have been going over how to take care of your fabrics, which means how to take care of your clothes, because that is one of the most sustainable things you can do, is to take care of your clothes and make your clothes last longer. So what we will be going over today is probably one of the most difficult fabrics to understand, I guess. Something with the S's. The S's got a lot going on. It is suede. We were going over how to take care of suede. If you don't know what suede is, just grab some leather and look at that underbelly. Look at that underside, baby. That's suede. So suede is really just the underside of leather, the underbelly of the leather. It's typically when you have suede, it's not as full grain or as sturdy as regular leather is. You're probably going to get it from either lambskin, goat, sometimes even pigs. Of course, you'll get it from calves, things of that nature. But that's all suede is. And suede, like satin, no, I'm sorry, not satin, like silk, is one of the most difficult fabrics to take care of because you can't really get it wet. Right? Anytime you've seen, it depends on what show you've been watching. But if it's raining and you have suede boots on, the person's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to ruin my suede. Because you are, right? Your suede and water really don't mix together, which is like, girl, how do you wash it? How do you get stains out of suede? What exactly do you do? So the very first thing, when you purchase anything suede, the best thing I could tell you is to first get a protective spray. The best type of care is preventative care. Go ahead, get that the protective spray, and spray on your suede. Now, I'm not saying that you won't have to spot clean afterwards. And when you do spray, something that they don't tell you, something that they may not tell you is that you need to spray often, right? So let's say once a quarter, depending on how much you wear your suede pieces, but you need to spray your suede often because it wears out and then you need to reapply it. Just things like that. Like, let's just think of when we're painting our nails, for example. That was the best thing that came to my mind. You always need to still reapply the nail polish. Like, it wears out, but you need to reapply it. So that's the very first thing. The next thing is that these are really accessories that you need for suede, which is a brush. Like a nice bristle, soft brush if there's dirt on it or if there's anything that's really surface level, instead of just wiping it off with your hands, because let's think about when we wipe something off with our hands, it's still a little bit smooth, right? Then your hands are still smooth. So at some point you're going to impression that dirt into the fabric, which is why I don't always wipe things off with your hands. Like, just take out your hand right now. Well, not if you're driving, of course. And wipe your hand with your other hand. Like, you see how to even start the wipe, you're pressing something down and then moving it over. Versus if you have a brush, there's little bristles that are going to help you brush it a little bit better. And then also, you just need a brush because the texture on top of your suede, you don't want it to be one color. You don't want it to be a certain cute little pattern. So when we think about suede, sometimes it has those dark spots or those dark areas, or suede cannot be evenly colored. That's because it's not brushed. So if you brush it one way, it's one color. If you brush it down the other way, it's a darker color. So you also need a brush just to brush off your suede and just to give it that really uniform pattern that we like. Okay, so the biggest thing with suede, you do not put it in the washer and dryer. Do we understand? You do not put your suede in the washer. You just don't do it, okay? You don't put it in the washer. You don't put it in the dryer. You spot clean. And like I said, I think this was maybe it was satin we talked about this with, but you never rub. You always blot. If you have any stain, listen, the best rule of thumb is to blot it. Blot, blot, blot. Do not rub anything in. I don't care what the fabric is at this point, just blot. Blot is the best thing. So what you want to do when you have your suede, you just get, after you brush it and you get that dirt off of it, and if it doesn't come off that way, you just take a damp cloth, you mix vinegar or dish soap with water, 2 parts water, 1 part vinegar, or 1 part dish soap. Get a damp cloth, not drenched, damp. Take it and you just nicely blot it down. You nicely blot it. And that is pretty much it. After you blot it, you brush it to make sure that you get like some of the ring in, to make sure that it's still uniform. And that's pretty much it. Like, all you really need is a damp cloth to blot. And then if you get oil or grease on your suede, use cornstarch to get it out. So just drizzle your cornstarch on there, let it sit for a little bit, and the cornstarch should absorb the oil and should absorb the grease. And then you brush that off, you wipe that off, and it should soak it up. If it doesn't, just keep on repeating the process. And as the cornstarch soaks up more and more and more, then at the very end, maybe you can blot it a little bit, but take it fresh. And that's pretty much how you take care of Suede. The best thing I can say with Suede is just don't get it wet. Don't even tempt yourself. Don't even have to do anything. Just do not get it wet and call it a dessert. Okay? That's all you have to do. Do not get your Suede wet. But if you happen to get it wet, don't think it's the end of the world. Just try to clean it up as best as you can. And if you do have Suede shoes, always the great rule of thumb with Suede shoes, you just don't wear it when it's raining. April showers, put the Suede shoes away. Put them to the back. Put them to the back. Okay? You got a Suede skirt and you're out drinking? Listen. Listen. You got a Suede skirt? You're out there drinking? Don't spill that drink on yourself. Now that, my good sir, my good ma'am, that may be worth fighting over. I don't know. I'm going to put my hands in the air. I don't know. I'm not encouraging violence. I do not encourage violence. But if you're out and you have a Suede skirt on, a Suede vest on, a Suede jacket on, a Suede pair of shoes on, and somebody bumps into you and spills their drink on your Suede item, listen. Once again, I don't promote violence. But if there was an opportunity, that would be the opportunity, and I don't think I would get mad. Like, if that was the end, if somebody came up to me and was like, oh, I got arrested, I'm like, girl, for what? Oh, I got into a fight. I was like, why? Somebody spilled their drink on my Suede vest. Okay, girl, I get it. I got the bail money if you need it. I get it. But you guys, don't fight. But please do not get your Suede wet. Do not do it. And now it is time to move on to our segment of party fashion notes. So during this segment, we talk about the things that you need to know this weekend when you're at your parties and you're like, girlies, what's going on? What's happening? What's the vibes? What are we talking about? This is what all the fashion girlies are talking about. So the first thing is really just a follow-up on the Dior situation. So the Dior, if we remember Dior and how they had that whole debacle happen with their manufacturing and they weren't paying them. This is the same thing where we talk about they only paid their workers $56 to make a $2,800 bag, right? We talked about that. So in the midst of this, last week the update was Dior, LVMH is going to make Dior like Louis, where they're going to make most of their things in-house, and it'll be really that vertical integration where it'll be mainly owned by the company. Well, that was a great solution. Kudos, whatever, babes. This week it came out that Dior breached UK's modern slavery requirements. So there's that, and this is a month after the whole situation happened. So I'm assuming that it is connected to that, and they just didn't file their paperwork at the right time because, babies, they knew. They just got in trouble. Like, they knew what was knocking at the door. They knew. We go back to a conversation that's been happening around the last 2 weeks, which actually, when I first wrote down like my notes for this section, I was like, nothing happened. And then as I talk, I'm like, actually, things did happen. Very first thing is we go back to the Lil Yachty in New York versus Atlanta conversation and fashion that's been going on. So essentially, Lil Yachty went on, it was either a podcast or a TikTok. I'm not really for sure where it was at. Or it may have just been his story, honestly. But Lil Yachty essentially said New Yorkers can't dress. New Yorkers can't dress. Brooklyn, you guys ain't doing it out there like you need to be doing it, but Atlanta is. Atlanta is the home of the fashion. Atlanta is just that. So, with that being said, New Yorkers hopped on his head, rightfully so, because what are you even talking about? Mind you, I live in Atlanta. I'm originally from Kentucky, so best believe the style that I have came from me. Okay? But I say all that to say I have no ties to either one. I guess I would have ties to Atlanta because I stay here. But because I stay here, I'm like, bro, you're lying. You're lying. Now, I love Atlanta. I love my Atlanteans. But you're out of your mind if you think that people in Atlanta dress better than people in New York. That's just not the case. So a part of me felt like he said it to get hype. You know, like you ever, when people say something, I'm sorry, it's called trolling. When people say some things and you're like, there's no way you think that is fact, so you have to be trolling. That's the only other option. The only other option is you have to be trying to get got. Like you want to go viral, which is why I didn't talk about it, because there's no way. You can't name one. You can't name one fashion company that is even based out of Atlanta, which should tell you everything you need to know. Like, I'm not saying Atlanta doesn't have a fashion market, because it definitely does, but to compare Atlanta fashion to New York fashion and say that Atlanta people dress better, it's just not accurate. It's just not accurate. It just doesn't make any sense. I can't even name one, because I can name trends that have happened in Atlanta, which is really just the South, just that dirty South. And this is the early 2000s that we're talking about too, right? Now, I will say, if he is trying to reference the way Y2K is headed, then Atlanta did have a big part of the fashion in of Y2K, just for let's just think of jorts. Let's think of jorts, yeah. Let's think of really big tees. I don't want to say Echo, because all of those type of brands I would still definitely see in New York when I went to New York in high school. But so I think if he's referring to like Southern fashion, then yeah, I think Atlanta would be up there. But even when it comes to Southern fashion, I think Atlanta has some competitors. And I think, honestly, you just cannot compare Northern fashion to Southern fashion, because not the diaspora is different, but the politics are different. The state in which people grew up was different. So let's think about it from the Black standpoint, right? In the South, we go back to slavery, we go back to oppression and things like that. And not saying that New York didn't have them, but New York has always been the place of quote unquote freedom, right? So think about the Great Migration and how people went up there to go test ideas and go live their life. Let's think about the Harlem, excuse me. Let's think about the Harlem Renaissance, right? So New York has a longer history of being this freer city where you go and you test and you try new things, and that of course then reflects the fashion. That reflects the fashion. So it reflects the fact that people in New York are able to experiment with clothes. They're able to create this whole thing. We think about the garment edition. We think about all these things that New York is the house of, that influences the fashion. So then we go back to the South and we think about the politics of the South. Quite frankly, Black people was just trying to not get harmed. So with that means that you go into... you conform. There it is. That's what I'm looking for. You conform to what's around you. Conforming to what's around you means that you look the same as everybody else too. So now in the South, we have all of these people that are trying to look the same, to conform to what is going on. That does not push progression. The South has never been a place to push progression, and you need the push. You need the push of progression to push fashion forward. which is why New York, like, it's, when he said that, I was just like, no, that's literally not it at all. Now, like I said, I may give it to Atlanta in the South. Like, I personally believe if I'm going to stay in the South, I need to just stay in Atlanta. Like, where else would I go? Like, where, like, no other city makes sense. And I'm not saying that you can't push the bounds of fashion here, but 9 times out of 10, people in Atlanta will conform to how everybody else is dressing around them versus dressing like themselves and having whatever personal style or whatever they want. That's just what it is. And the Lululemon mom, the whatever, but that's Atlanta just is not a place for pushing fashion. You get dressed however you want to get dressed in Atlanta, as you should, but there's so many times where you will show up as the most overdressed person, which is, I don't think is a problem, where you will show out and you stick out like a sore thumb, which is what, it doesn't matter if you have personal style, but it's not the same. It's not the same. In New York, you will go, you will get dressed, you will have the time of your life, and everybody will look different. Everybody will have their own twist to something. I can't say the same thing would happen in Atlanta. And honestly, I'm not trying to ride Atlanta because I live here and I love you guys, but babes, the taste just ain't there sometimes. It's just not there. It hasn't been formed. It's still very Southern. It's still very new. And I guess that's the thing. People in Atlanta, the people that dress in Atlanta, it still feels like they're trying to test their style out. It still feels like they're trying to explore and figure it out versus somebody in New York that I feel like has had their whole life to figure out how they want to dress, right? So learning how to dress in Atlanta is like, as you get older, you look around and you're like, I don't want to do this, versus already growing up in that environment. So it's definitely very, very different. Another thing that is currently going on right now is Charlie XCX is credited as coming back and bringing back indie sleaze. Which, if you don't know what indie sleaze is, let's break it down. Because I wasn't necessarily a part of the indie sleaze group. I dibbled and I dabbled, but I wasn't fully there. So I'm going to give you some iterations of what I feel it looks like, but always make sure that, because there's an Instagram, and I think it's really just called Indie Sleaze. And that person goes over what that time looked like, and you really need to open your Instagram books, because I definitely, it's not in the fashion books, but seriously, Indie Sleaze. So it's around from 2006 to 2012. And the best way to put indie sleaze is it was a really soft grunge. It was a very soft, messy, slutty grunge. When we think of, let's think of those Jeffrey Campbell boots that were big during the 2000s. Everybody wanted them. Oh my gosh. I wanted a pair so bad. And I couldn't afford them. Like most things, I couldn't afford them, but I wanted a pair. And I think I went to we go to malls now, and you know how malls have those little Fashion Nova shops, and clearly you walk in and you're like, babe, you got all this from Alibaba. So before Fashion Nova and Shein was a big thing, those stores were everywhere in the mall. And I used to go to a shoe one, and they had the knockoff versions. Oh my gosh. I thought I was that girl. Oh, so sorry. So it was about fedoras. People were wearing vests. Let's think of a lot of layered jewelry. So layered silver, pewter, that was the color then. With a fedora. This Avril Lavigne And if it wasn't that, it was like these metallics, these bodysuits. It was just a lot of layering. And the best way I can explain it is, and even if you weren't layering, the men would be wearing like these um graphic tees. It was, now that I think about it, it was a great time. It was a great time. And the reason that I said I wasn't directly in that club is because I just didn't have the money. But I saw it from the outside looking in, and I remember wearing a lot of layered necklaces and trying to wear like vests. I remember when I went to a trip in New York during this time, and I was trying to get my my outfit together, and it was very like soft rocker chic girl. This is when combat boots were a thing, so everybody had a pair of combat boots. You wore some leggings with it. Like I said, you had that vest on. Some people wore like loose ties, but that's what indie sleaze was, and it was really based off that 70s and 80s grunge. But it was so soft. It was such a soft take on it, but then it was also so slutty at the exact same time. So essentially, she's credited, and they're like, listen, she's bringing back indie sleaze. She is the reason, and essentially everybody's just fighting it right now. So that's also something that's going on within the fashion industry. And then when we talk about fashion politics, let's get into what's happening in Bangladesh. So I think maybe a couple episodes ago in Textile Tea, and it's so crazy that I can even say a couple of episodes ago, because I was talking to somebody about when I started Black Fash, and they're like, oh my god, I used to listen to that. And I was like, yeah, I should have kept on going, but we're here now. And it's even so interesting to be like, yeah, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about Bangladesh and how, whatever. So let's get into it. So, like I said, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about Bangladesh, and I was referring to how Bangladesh is one of the biggest places to get your garments made. Everybody gets their clothes made in Bangladesh. So right now in Bangladesh, there's a lot of civil unrest. So essentially, they're fighting the government's job quota. The people of Bangladesh are fighting the government. They're fighting the job quota, but they're fighting a whole bunch of like civil rights issues within Bangladesh. It's a lot of violent unrest. According to what I read, around 300 people died. They have now inflicted curfews. And what this does, besides, of course, how it affects the Bangladesh person, is it also affects the supply chain of the U.S. because all of our garments are getting made over there, right? So now we have clothes that are stalled, collections aren't coming out, and we really are referencing more of the fast fashion industry. So let's think about Zara, let's think about H&M, probably Urban Outfitters, and if Urban Outfitters is over there, of course, Free People. So really those type of brands. And the question on everybody's mind was, are those brands asking for a discount? Right? Because I'm not getting my things on time. There's a lot of civil unrest going on. So I'm making a discount. But that discount that companies are probably asking for, is going to put that country and that person into a harder financial spot, right? Because we already go back to the ethics of getting your things made offshore, and how you get them made offshore because it's cheaper to get them made, right? It's cheaper to get them made. So what does that look like when, on top of only getting paid, let's say $36 a week, on top of only getting paid $36 a week, you ask for a discount because of the civil unrest that's going on, because it's taking you longer to get your things. Well, H&M said, we're good. We're not going to ask for a discount. We're gonna stand by you guys, right? H&M trying to do their big one too, which it's not that big, but honestly, from the research that I saw, H&M was the only person that said, "Hey, we're not gonna ask for a discount." Zara said they weren't commenting. I didn't see anything about Urban or Free People because I'm pretty sure they just don't want to be associated with that. But the two biggest companies, H&M and Zara, Zara said, "I don't know about that, y'all. We may need that discount. We may need that discount. I don't know about that, you guys." But H&M says, it's okay. We're not going to ask for a discount. We're going to stand with you guys. So kudos to H&M. And let's all keep the Bangladesh person and country in our mind. And that is pretty much all I have for party fashion notes. Make sure you guys stay in tune for what is going on. And everything I say, feel free to look it up. Check out our articles. And let's move on to the thoughts of a rejected fashionista. So for this segment, I posed a question, or somebody posed a question to me, and essentially it was, will fashion designers be replaced with AI? Right? As AI gets bigger and bigger and bigger, will AI start to eliminate roles within the fashion industry? And a lot of people would go on like a rant, and I said I was starting with a rant, but I'm going to try not to, because honestly, it's just as simple as a no. No, I personally do not think you can't teach AI creativity, right? You can't teach AI creativity. You can't teach AI how they are currently viewing the world and what's currently going on in the world, and translate that into clothing and translate that into designs. You need a human interpretation for some creative gigs, if not all creative gigs. The only person that I would think would be in danger is not even, because I would say graphic designers, but not even them, because you still need like a human input or a human interpretation of a brief to get something done. So I honestly, when it comes to AI and being in the creative industry, I think that people in the creative industry are in the best position when it comes to AI, because you're always going to need human interpretation to get things done. Now, will AI help you? Yes. I think AI is a tool that we should use to help us do things a little bit better. But I feel like I 100% feel like you always are going to need human interpretation. And if you do not, it's so far down the line. Your AI, from what I've read and from my research, you're nowhere close. Nowhere close. AI is, like I said, I feel like for creatives, AI is going to be a tool that is used, which is why I always tell people to never shy away from technology. Like, don't use it as a way to promote yourself. Use it as a way to get your end goal done faster. Just use it as a tool. Automate something. Do something. Literally talk to the AI and be like, hey, the one way I can see designers using AI is talking to it and being like, hey, this is the image that I have in my mind, draw it, or something along that nature. But even in that fit, taking something 2D and making it 3D needs human interpretation. Anything creative, to start it to end it, you need human interpretation. So I don't know. Yeah, I think out of all the out of all the jobs, creatives are right where you need to be. You need human interpretation for art, for it to make sense. Do you guys see those things that like people are like, oh, AI fashion, AI, that looks horrible. Those things look atrocious. And I'm like, I can't believe you see that and then think, oh, this is gonna take my job. Girl, what? Those things look so bad. Oh my gosh. Where is the human interpreter? Those things look so freaky bad. I personally think AI graphics look bad. I like very it looks so soft to me, if that makes sense. It looks so soft. It looks so cloudy. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. But like I said, just use it as a tool and you'll be okay. And those are thoughts of a rejected fashionista because, who am I? What do I know? But creatives, I think we are safe from AI. And we're going to go ahead and get into our part 2 of the Roaring 20s. I think last episode I talked about how much it was within the Roaring 20s and how big of I don't want to say a case, how big of a situation this was. So we cut it down into 2 parts. So we're going to get into the second part now of our design decode experience. So we ended the 20s with talking about knitwear. And we talked about how Coco Chanel took this traditional knitwear that was for underwear, originally just for ladies' undergarments, and turned it into sweaters, cardigans, pleated maxi skirts, dresses, all of that. And we paired it with this hat that was really big in the 20s. So we ended with that, and then we get into hemlines. So the 20s is really I don't want to say one of the only decades, but I'll go with only. It is one of the only decades where we really see throughout the 20s the hemlines go up and go down quickly. Right? It happened really fast. And I feel like one of the reasons that it happened is because now that the 20s is really based on this androgynous style. So it's really based on this low waist, quote unquote, tomboy. We're going away from, like I said in the first episode, the one prior to this, excuse me, we are only older women wore things that were really big on shape, right? So it emphasized our waist, it emphasized our S back. We had a bustle, we had all of these different types of things. And in the 20s, the young woman was like, I don't want that, right? I know how to vote now, baby. I don't want to wear that. I don't want to wear those corsets. We throwing those away. So you really introduced this tomboy low waist or no waist style, which does not fit everybody, right? That doesn't complement the way everybody looks. So how do we make sure this fits everybody and this looks good? That's when we start to raise and lower these hems, and we start to do it very quickly, and we do it really fast. It almost reminds me of now how trends happen so quickly. That's what these hemlines remind me of, right? It reminds me of how they moved almost twice, which is a lot times 2. So they moved a lot within the 20s, and it's really because these outfits didn't fit everybody. So everybody was experimenting. Okay, so how can I make this work? What do I need to do? And most of these dresses were really broken up by geometric shapes. So there was a lot of pattern play done. There was a lot of I was gonna say waist play, but there wasn't any waist play. But it was really a lot of pattern play going on, right? A lot of pattern play, a lot of textures that were playing off of each other. So this rise and fall of the hemline really pushed one of the biggest things and the biggest concepts that we see from the 20s, which are flappers. So the episode prior to this, I talked about how flappers were the outcasts, right? So flappers were these girls in the club. By 1923, we have these hems above our knee. We have no sleeves. And it was really just now that we have those sleeves, we have women that are now invested in deodorant and razors and shaving and all that type of jazz, which we didn't necessarily have before. But these flappers, they were scandalous girlies. Like what? The age of jazz? They were scandalous. Which may have been why we liked them. But yeah, they were scandalous. The modern woman wasn't a big fan. The modern woman was not a big fan. The modern woman looked down on them. The modern woman was like, oh, I would never be at a club dancing and da, 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 da. So flappers weren't the girls that we think they are and the girls that we mostly see on TV. And this age of the 20s was really the age of like a taste for dance, as one designer said. And it was really girls that just wanted to dance. And that influenced the way the clothing was made, right? So now that's where we get that fringe from. Because as we're dancing and we're twirling and we're moving, that fringe is moving with them. That's where we get these beads from. Because once again, as we twist and as we move, that those beads are moving with us at the very end. That's where we get these diamonds and this really elaborate beading from, because we're under the night lights. So now we're sparkling and we're shining, and it's just like this is flappers are a direct result of these young women wanting to dance. They wanted to dance, and that was it. And flappers clothing are a result of that. So we look into how fashion in the world communicate, and that is a direct correlation, right? We're making these clothes because these girlies want to dance, okay? Now we're sleeveless, right? Because they want to dance. They're hot. We're at the club. Like, we're having a good time. What else can we do to make this outfit look better, look more intriguing, look like the moment that it is? So that's why we have all this experimental and all this type of different play coming at hand. So that's really the flappers, and that's literally all it was, is women wanting to dance. And now designers were making clothes that looked better when you are dancing, combined with no waist, or low waist. So those are the things you need to look for when you see something and we're trying to decode, where is it from? Is it from the 20s? Is it from the 30s? If it has low or no waist, 20s. If it has flapper dresses, of course, 20s. Because it was a very short time. Like, flappers didn't make it to the 30s. Just because that taste of dancing really died down within the late 20s. So really, between 1923 and I really want to say really 1929, I'll say around that time is really the height of flappers, because they do not make it to the 30s. So anytime you see a flapper, automatically know you were in the 20s. Automatically know you're in the 20s. Anytime you see, like I said, that knitwear, like a full knitwear look with the hats, that is going to be the 20s as well. So we go into menswear and what that looked like in the 20s. And menswear in the 20s really was trying to move to informal wear. It didn't really get that far because we still have frock coats, we still have tailcoats, but men's fashion was really trying to push themselves as far as they could during the time. Let's get back to the time. As far as they could during the time and see what else fashion had to offer. And the one thing that fashion had to offer within the men's world was, now we have these things called lounge suits. So that's the informality that's kind of being pushed right now. Now we have the lounge suits. So now men have these different styles of learning how to dress. So this is when we see like the French style pop up. This is when we see the American sack suit pop up. But this in the 20s is the first time that we see not different demographics. That's not the word I'm looking for. But I'll say we start to see different countries have different signature ways of dressing within the menswear group, right? So we've seen it with women's. We've seen it. It's always been on women's, but for most menswear, it may be like a fabrication difference, but for most of the time the silhouette is the same, right? The silhouette necessarily doesn't change, and this is when we start to see it change, right? So of course we have the French style, which is a little bit more tailored, a little bit more slim cut versus the American sack suit. And this is also when men's suits start to become lighter. The fabrication becomes lighter. So now we all know that in the summer you wear linen suits, right? Now we know that, but this is but in the 20s is when it started to happen for menswear, right? Excuse me. So this sickness, oh my gosh. I don't know when this happened, kids, but is when we start to see suits get lighter, especially during the summer. Like I just said, we have linen. And this changes men's underwear. So before, men would wear like an all-in-one underwear. It kind of reminds me of, not what the Mormons wear now, because I think the Mormons still wear two-piece, but I think they wear like that white tank top and then something, but it's actually just like a romper. It's a tight romper for men that they wore underneath their clothing. But now that we have these lighter suits, I think lighter undies too. Men want lighter underwear. So this is now where we start to get these cotton shorts that men wore as underwear. So this is where we start to see that change happen. And once again, I love talking about this because once one thing changes in fashion, sometimes it affects something else, so now other things have to change, right? So now we go away from this one piece underwear suit, which maybe still older men wore. Like if you were costume designing something and you had a younger man and an older man in the 20s, you may put the older man in in that underwear scene, right? In case he's getting up and getting dressed or whatever. You would put him in a one piece, in that one piece signature 20s, and then you would probably put the younger man in the cotton shorts. The one that's more quote unquote progressive, whatever. That's more so pushing forward. So that's what's going on in menswear during the 20s. And then another thing that is also happening on the side, we have modernism that is happening in Russia with Russian designers. And that's just really big, bold geometric prints. So that's when we start to see people play with large diamonds and large squares, and really in Russia, really referencing old fashioned as well with like a new twist. So they may still wear like the jumpsuit that military wise you would wear, but what does that look like in today's time or in their time, right? Same silhouettes, same everything, but it may just be more graphic, larger diamonds, and bigger design. And that is the 20s all wrapped up. Woo! That is it for the 20s. Next week for design decoding, we may be doing the 30s because the 30s I feel like is a really hard decade to spot if you don't know. Because there's nothing really came out of the 30s that the average person knows came out of the 30s, if that makes sense. And we'll backtrack why that is, what was going on, and what things you really do need to know that did happen in the 30s. And that is it for this week's episode of Press and Pins. Make sure you guys subscribe, check us out, and always remember that when you guys do shop Fibers, FIIBERS.com, that you can use Press and Pins to get a discount. So make sure to check us out and have a great day designing. Toodles.